The House dirties up the clean energy bill. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Jesse Balmert, State House reporter for the Cincinnati Enquirer, Andy Chow, State House reporter for Ohio Public Radio, Bob Clegg, Republican strategist, and Joseph Maas of the Ohio Hispanic Coalition. You could call House Bill 6 the bill formerly known as the Clean Energy Bill. House Republicans this week stripped the clean elements out of the measure. Originally, the bill would charge electric customers a fee to subsidize 2 nuclear power plants as well as solar and wind energy companies, all of which do not produce emissions. Well, this week, the Clean Energy Bill wiped out the subsidies for solar and wind and replaced them with subsidies for 2 coal-powered plants. Coal plants, of course, do produce emissions. So in the end, lawmakers have come clean, you could say. It really is just a power plant bailout bill. That's the case, right, Andy? After all this, it's a subsidy for power plants.
If you ask opponents, even a lot of conservative groups are saying that this is just a corporate bailout. We've heard for years now that these nuclear plants have been struggling. They've been having a hard time keeping up in the marketplace, and they've needed some sort of what they called legislative relief. And then when this bill came along, it sort of seemed like, okay, yeah, we'll give you that legislative relief, but then we also want to tool around with the renewable energy standards and the efficiency standards. And now, like you said, they took out wind, they took out solar. It's just, it pumps money into nuclear. It's hard to argue against this being a bailout bill.
So Jesse, what happened? I mean, it's the Clean Energy Bill, and there's nothing clean about it. You could argue that nuclear emissions are cleaner than coal. I guess you could say that.
Yeah, well, essentially the speaker, who is a big proponent of this bill, is looking for a way to get it onto the floor and get it passed. And previously they had been talking with Democrats about getting some of them on board by making some changes, such as increasing the renewable energy to 50% by 2050, and some kind of barriers on the money that would be going to the nuclear plants to ensure that they would go to workers, et cetera. And essentially that was not something they wanted to play with. So I think what they're ending up doing is going back to the Republicans and coming up with a bill that they feel like they can get support in that particular caucus for. Republicans have been not a fan. A number of Republicans have not been a fan of these renewable energy standards and energy efficiency standards for quite a while. So this is one way to pick up some votes.
Mike, you mentioned something that's kind of interesting. The Union of Concerned Scientists, which is a progressive organization of scientists advocating for renewable energy, actually does endorse nuclear power, but only as a transitional measure into clean energy. But it's interesting that here, it seems like the intent is to completely reverse the direction of going into clean energy eventually, which is obviously retrograde.
Bob, you're an ad man.
Sure.
You had those great ads showing the cornfields and the solar panels and the kids on the swings and the State House in flames. What happened?
Well, obviously there's one side that's for this bill and one side that's against it, and
the flames won.
You're seeing that being played out on your TV screens. But I mean, not only is the speaker though in favor of this, so is the Senate president and the governor. So something will be passing. I don't know whatever passes the House, whether that's going to be able to get through the Senate. But what I like about it is the fact that the average consumer is going to end up paying less on their utility bill, and hey, I'm all for that.
Basically, it goes from they're saying $4 a month down to $1 a month fee.
Right.
So $3 savings.
And the thing that you have to consider is that a lot of money for the past 10 years has been pumped into efficiency programs, and the supporters of those efficiency programs say that has helped keep down the bottom line of a lot of people's electric bills. So it remains to be seen what the ultimate switch will be here.
What about the argument by the chairman of the committee that says this bill will help end state government intervention in the energy markets? How do you do that if you're offering subsidies?
That's exactly what they're doing.
No, they're arguing the renewable standards are gone, so that's government intervention.
But they're flipping it to nuclear. So the problem here is, for opponents of the bill, they're saying that the market has been messed with because of these renewable standards, so we're going to get rid of the renewable standards. When you ask like you said, the committee chair, when you ask him, well, what about the nuclear side of things? And he says, well, we're trying to kind of offset it for a little bit. And remember, this subsidy program for nuclear will sunset in 2026.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing the Republicans are really supportive of, that at the end of 2026, if there aren't any other changes before then, a lot of these subsidies, both nuclear and renewable, would be off the table.
Does this just show the strength of the energy industry, energy lobby at the State House? Bob?
Sure. I mean, it's, they've been pretty strong and they continue to be pretty strong. But, as far as the wind and solar, I mean, let's remember, during the Obama years, they got so much on the federal level. So it's not like they're being left just hanging. In fact, they can get much, much more on the from the federal government than they can from state government anyway. So they're going to be taken care of.
So Democrats aren't going to vote for this. Does the Speaker have enough votes to get this through the House? Because some Republicans don't like bailing out any industries.
Yeah, it doesn't seem, we don't know. This is still a really hard vote. These are taking two big issues that have had a hard time getting through both chambers and sort of combining them. So it could look like a really smart move by Larry Householder because he was able to sort of combine something that could pass, or it might be just too many hot button topics to get enough support.
All right. Looks like Ohio lawmakers will not have to redraw the congressional maps by the middle of June. The U.S. Supreme Court late Friday put a stay on that federal judge's order that Ohio had to redraw its maps. Of course, that federal judge said that our map is extremely gerrymandered and ordered the state to redraw it in time for the 2020 election. But of course, the U.S. Supreme Court is considering other cases from Maryland, from North Carolina, so this stay is not unexpected. Also, a case in Michigan was stayed until the court can decide those two big cases. Bob, not a huge surprise that the Supreme Court tapped the brakes on the Ohio ruling until they sort it all out.
Yeah, sure. And what I think is going to happen is that the Supreme Court will obviously come out with their two decisions in both the Maryland case and the North Carolina case, which means they'll probably remand back this case from Ohio back to the district court with their two decisions and say, okay, now let's review this case based on what we're saying in these two cases. So I think bottom line, we're going to have the same districts we have now in 2020.
But, Joe, the court could say in these two other cases, extreme gerrymandering is unconstitutional, and that would uphold the federal judge's.
It could, but I actually don't anticipate it. I think that the earlier decisions had to do with the availability of known technology to be able to do this. But I think even with with the newer technology of being able to identify how to do it, and that exists right now, I think they will think it's too late to do it this time.
Okay. So lawmakers were not. They didn't have like little sketch pads out on their desk, did they, Jesse?
No, I think they were both anticipating and hoping that there would be a stay on this. They're in the middle of the budget. They're in the middle of an energy bill overhaul. So I think this is one less thing that they have on their plates, and they're happy to wait for the U.S. Supreme Court decision at the end of June.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, Andy, what the rulings do say, not only for 2020, but of course for the 2022 election, 2021 map redraw after the census.
Yeah, and lawmakers, like Jesse said, they were in no rush to kind of get this going, but the plaintiffs in this case have already presented an example map. So they're saying, hey, if we do need to draw a map, why don't you just use the map that we're offering up to you?
Being helpful.
Well, one thing we have to remember in all this is that here in Ohio, we did pass a new constitutional amendment to change the way that we draw our lines. So when we do go back in 2021 to redraw, it's going to be a different process where a minority party will have a say in what's being drawn.
That's the goal, anyway.
That's the goal.
No
yes.
guarantees.
No.
You can go 4 years every 4 years. Drawing maps every 4 years instead of 10. Wouldn't that be fun? Anyway, abortion rights supporters are mobilizing here in Ohio and around the country. Scores of people marched on the State House this week to denounce recently passed laws that ban abortion at very early stages of pregnancy. Of course, Ohio recently banned abortion starting at about 6 weeks. Georgia has done the same. Alabama has banned abortions in most cases, except for the cases where the woman's life is in danger. Jesse Balmert, do abortion rights activists seem more energized and mobilized than they have in, say, the past few years?
Well, I think they have legislation to be energized and mobilized against. What we're really seeing is the changing makeup of the U.S. Supreme Court playing out in Ohio policy and bills. We recently passed the heartbeat bill. There are a number of other pieces of legislation before the legislature, from making sure that fetal remains are cremated and buried, to a bill that would ban private insurance coverage of abortion procedures in most cases. So I think there's just a lot in the legislature right now, and opponents of this type of legislation are, hoping to make their voices heard on it.
This is not going to get settled anytime soon. It's going to be at least a couple of years before the Supreme Court takes this up, if they take it up at all. Joe, I mean, how does this play out over the next 10 months?
No, over the
12 months in the presidential?
there will be a temporary closure of sorts. So maybe that's not the right word to use, but certainly the only thing that the district courts and the courts of appeal have to go on is Roe versus Wade and the 1992 case that talked about viability of the Casey case. So as a consequence of that, I think that'll happen relatively quickly. And then, as in the gerrymandering case, then you will have all the cases then brought together before the Supreme Court. And the hope, of course, with the opponents, from the opponent's perspective, is that the Supreme Court is now loaded and will somehow further modify Roe versus Wade, as in the Casey case.
And this is the result of decades of work from these anti-abortion groups who have been trying to chip away at Roe v. Wade. And this is sort of like they're in the red zone right now, where they really think that this is the tipping point where you have all these bills from all these 8 states with a heartbeat bill, and they think that if they push that to the U.S. Supreme Court, this might be where they actually see a change in decision.
Bob, the polls show a small but measurable minority of Americans support abortion rights with restrictions. It's pretty much consistent. Is there a danger for Republicans that could galvanize support on the left and
Yeah, I mean,
like the pro-life movement has always been very galvanized on this issue?
yeah, they have been, and I think the pro-abortion side has always relied on the courts as their backstop. Well, now they view this and they are getting worried that maybe we don't have that anymore. The political fallout on this is nothing, because remember, and I've said this before, when we had this gubernatorial election just last year, this was an issue. Richard Cordray made abortion an issue. He talked about Mike DeWine being extreme, having no exceptions for rape and incest. Mike DeWine has never hidden that his whole political career.
Do you think that was a deciding issue? I've heard that a lot. Do you
No,
think that was a deciding issue in the race?
If it was a deciding issue, then they shouldn't have elected Mike DeWine governor.
But I do think it is a deciding issue for a lot of people who might not have voted for Donald Trump as president. I think when they were looking at deciding whether to not vote at all or to vote for the Republican candidate, I think they voted for Donald Trump because of the issue of electing or appointing judges.
Yeah, for the conservatives.
Yes, for the conservatives.
Yeah, I just think that the liberals and the Planned Parenthood and the pro-abortion people have just a problem getting people elected to office that have their viewpoints, or not enough of them to have their viewpoints. So this is where they find themselves, having to rely on the courts.
As usual, I agree with Bob. I think that the problem is that on our side, on the progressive side, we're not a single constituency. Neither are Republicans. We are less so. And as a consequence of that, it's hard sometimes to get people out. And while you might want to get, or you do get people out because of the abortion issue, you lose them on perhaps another issue. What? Flag burning, or I don't know, you pick it. So that's the challenge.
That could be
that's
because
Bob is correct.
That could be, Jesse, because abortion is legal. It's a lot easier to oppose something and to galvanize somebody to be against something, to complain about something, than it is to defend. It's harder to defend than it is to attack in some ways, politically.
I think the places where you might see this issue coming up is in those suburban races where these issues can sway a number of voters, and if the race is already close. I think you see that in the way that some Ohio senators were voting on these bills, either to oppose them or to oppose not allowing an exception for rape or incest, which has really become an issue for opponents of these types of proposals.
No doubt, Bob, there are conservative lawmakers that strongly oppose abortion and they vote on principle.
Yes.
But lawmakers who are perhaps more nuanced and more moderate in their stance have always been able to blame the courts for this. Well, if the courts kick it back to them, to the Republican lawmakers, they actually have to cast a vote to ban abortion. Does that cause problems for them?
No, because I think what they'll do, what they should do, is just put it on the ballot. Then, let the vote to put it on the ballot. Let the people of Ohio decide what they want to do. And I've always believed this, that the court, the U.S. Supreme Court, should allow states to make this kind of a decision of what they want to do with abortion, and let every state, California, New York, I'm sure they'll have it.
But that's the pre-Roe versus Wade position.
Yeah, and just let it play out.
All right. Ohio law prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, military status, national origin, disability, age, and ancestry. It does not include sexual orientation or gender identity. A bill before lawmakers would change that. The Ohio Fairness Act would add those categories to the list and would apply to employment, housing, and public accommodation. Supporters say it would provide protection for the LGBTQ community. Opponents say the law is vague and infringes on religious freedom. Joe, do you think we should add these categories to the bill?
Oh, I absolutely think that they should be added. We're talking about Senate Bill 11, and if you look at it, I actually read the entire bill. What it does is it affects 30, 40, or 50 other statutes that are already in the book that address anything concerning discrimination on the basis of gender, and then includes sexual orientation and gender identity. And I don't think it's vague. I think that the argument that is being presented, that it could generate lawsuits, every law generates lawsuits because it needs clarification. But if somebody is terminated from their job because of gender identity, they should have a right to bring that to the attention of the court and have the court determine on the evidence as to whether that actually happened. That should not discourage the passage of law.
Same-sex marriage has become more accepted now. It's legal according to the Supreme Court. Is the legislature more apt to agree to these additions to the laws?
It's part of the argument. Part of the argument is, well, nationwide, same-sex couples are legally allowed to get married, yet that person it might be possible for that person to go to their place of employment and then be fired for sharing the pictures that they took from their wedding. So it seems to be this disparity among state law and national law, and then even local municipalities, because these local governments already have these policies in the books as well. So this bill is an attempt to make this a statewide cover for LGBTQ.
Federal law does not include these two categories. So Ohio would be one of roughly 24 states, Jesse, that would add this if they do it.
Yeah, I think you're seeing some momentum in this direction. John Kasich kind of brought back this category into non-discrimination against state employees. Governor Mike DeWine decided to keep that. The Ohio Chamber of Commerce has been on board with this bill, saying this is something that businesses like. They like to be in an environment where their employees feel like they can share their wedding pictures. So I'm actually a little surprised that this is moving quite as slowly as it is.
Some small businesses, Bob, we look at the big stories have been florists and bakers and cake salespeople. Don't want to be forced to provide cakes for same-sex marriages if they religiously oppose it.
Yeah.
Does this infringe on them?
Well, yes, it could. I don't, I hate the government on any issue telling, businesses and private citizens what they must do. I think it's great that Governor DeWine has kept what Governor Kasich did, and I think he has every right to. He's the governor, and he's doing it for all state employment purposes. However, I do believe, like gay marriage, this is something that is going to happen. We're going to have these kind of laws on the books. Yes, they will generate more lawsuits because we've seen that with both sex discrimination and age discrimination. Many times that does happen, and you need to have a lawsuit.
Yep.
A lot of times it's just thrown out there as an excuse. But that's the way it is with any law. So I think, it's a matter of whether Ohio wants to do it now or whether Ohio wants to do it 5 years from now or 10 years from now. But it's going to happen.
It's coming.
Recreational pot.
Yes.
And legalize sports betting. The whole list. All right. The Richard Strauss investigation is prompting action at the State House. Strauss is the former OSU team doctor accused of sexually abusing at least 177 athletes and students in mainly the 80s and 90s. Strauss died in 2005. After reading OSU's investigative report on the abuse, Governor DeWine this week called for lifting Ohio's statute of limitations for rape and other sex crimes. It now stands at 20 to 25 years. DeWine said if Strauss were alive today, he would not face charges.
if this man was still alive and could not be prosecuted, I think people would be furious.
Bob Clegg, this terrible story, the report is damning, but should it cause a change in state law?
Yes. I mean, I think that, this is not just an isolated incident, obviously. I mean, this went to a level that is amazing that it got to that level. But therefore, we can't let something like this happen again. And we're going to have to take steps. I give the governor credit for addressing it head on and coming up with some specific remedies that should be adopted. And let's remember, it's not going to be just for this specific case. It's going to deal with, it's going to affect a lot of other cases with the Catholic Church and other areas where we've seen this happen. And I think we're going to have to do something.
Joe, you're an attorney. Statutes of limitations are there for a reason. Is there a danger in eliminating them?
Yeah, and this is the problem. I think that the general public, and I think that the emotions, as so well expressed by Bob, are there in the community. However, what happens then is that you tie the statute of limitations, which is 25 years right now for rape and 20 years for gross sexual imposition, which is really probably what happened in these cases, that it ties it to the seriousness of the crime and the emotional impact on the victim, not necessarily on the evidence. And the problem is that sex crimes, there are actually not too many crimes like this, are interestingly devoid of anything other than the word of the accuser and the word of the defendant. And I think that the system is not perfect enough to be able to tolerate that. So to increase it beyond, or to make it, to have a no limit to 25. And also what you were suggesting, Mike, is that what happens with respect to memory? What happens with respect to the availability of witnesses that can, alibi witnesses, for example? Yeah. I don't remember what I was doing 25 years ago.
Well, look,
I think it's making it difficult.
We saw it on display during the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings in the Supreme Court. An alleged assault that happened 20, 25 years ago, and questions about memory were raised.
Yes.
What was but this was prompted by this report, by the governor. He had pretty strong language, called Dr. Strauss a monster.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, it looks like, I mean, this is definitely a signal from the state and from the governor that they really want to take a close look at this issue, and it might just begin a newer trend of really pushing on more of criminal justice reform on this issue. And it's important to note that, victims of sex crimes, it might have happened when they were young, it might have happened when they felt like they didn't have a voice, and so it might take years or even decades for them to come out and speak out about it.
I think another thing that's worth looking at is, I believe the civil statute of limitations for lawsuits is 2 years, which is incredibly short to bring a lawsuit against someone. And so I think that's certainly a concern. The other thing that I thought was interesting just on the politics of this is this eliminating the statute of limitation is something that Democratic lawmakers have been pushing for years and with little success. And so it'll be interesting whether that changes now that the governor is kind of on board with this proposal.
He does not lift the cap on damages, does not propose lifting the $250,000 cap on non-economic damages. Joe, is that something they should look at?
That's something that should be looked at, period. And by the way, I'm in favor of changing the statute of limitations on the civil side. I think 1 to 2 years is unbelievably low.
I was surprised that it was that low. I didn't even know it was only 2 years.
Yeah, and Med-Mal is the same situation. It's again, that's the traditional, Bob smiling, it's a traditional conservative position, anti-lawyer position.
Today.
I know, it's scary.
The governor also wants to look at the state medical board, some questions there. It's been redacted for now from the OSU report. The medical board has waived the confidentiality, so he's also going to look at what happened there. Why didn't Dr. Strauss lose his license?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is really one of the more important things in all of this, because this is something that is under the control of the state of Ohio. And, it's just not this case. You wonder sometimes in other cases how doctors hadn't had their licenses pulled. And I think people don't understand, at least I don't, how the medical board even works and how do they come to these kind of decisions in these cases. So I think just for transparency reasons, it's great that the governor wants to do that.
We see these issues with other things, like if a teacher's fired in one school district but then moves to another and then that record doesn't follow them. So it's important to add more transparency to these things.
Yep. All right, let's get to our final off-the-record parting shots. Joe Mas, you're up first.
Thank you, Mike. As my closing comments, I'm remembering my very good friend, activist Ruben Herrera, who died unexpectedly of natural causes recently. The son of migrant workers. Whenever there was a march or a demonstration, he was there, bullhorn in hand, and we will miss him greatly.
He was a good man. Bob.
The state Republican Party just endorsed in the last week the two incumbents that are running, Judy French and Sharon Kennedy.
For the Supreme Court?
Pardon?
For the Supreme Court.
For the U.S. Supreme Court, or for the
Ohio
Ohio
Supreme
Supreme Court. Gosh, too many Supreme Courts have. But no, this highlights the fact that other than the president, the only other statewide offices on the ballot next year are those two Supreme Court seats. Wow. That's it.
All right. Andy.
Yeah, I was trying to cover the Ohio Fairness Act, which we talked about, and I was denied access to record and take pictures, and it's just kind of putting a spotlight on a bigger issue where we need to add more transparency to what the government's doing.
Yeah, and Andy is not a very good cartoonist, so that helped.
I guess I was saddened to learn that the Gatehouse Media and Columbus Dispatch had laid off a number of reporters and librarians and their cartoonists this week, and it's just important to have more people having eyes on local government and your community.
Yeah, sign of the times. Last week we mentioned that there's a loophole in the new ticket tax in Columbus, that if Columbus Blue Jackets or Broadway and Columbus season ticket holders renew their tickets before July 1st, they won't have to pay the ticket tax next year. Well, it turns out, as first reported by Business First, if they renew for 3 or even 7 years down the road, they won't have to pay the ticket tax for any of those years. So if you want to pay for Blue Jackets tickets 7 years from now, you know what? You probably deserve a little break. That's Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online, Facebook, Twitter, and WOSU.org. For our crew, for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.